We love the Berzatto drama, but are we getting too far away from the kitchen?
Richie and Nat are the best characters. Is it just us, or do they really deserve some acting nominations?
Will Ibrahim be taken advantage of in his quest to franchise the beef?
It's a race against the clock. Will this restaurant shut down or what?
Don't keep us on the back burner. Red and Red Real Reviews serves up season 4 of FX's The Bear on Hulu.
Ahoy, ladies! Didn't see you there. Would you guys like to set sail on this ocean of flavor?
Randall, look at eye contact. You're gonna be cool, right?
Oh, baby, I'm as cool as the other side of the pillow.
Been staring at this board for days.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
Act. Bears eat beets.
My brain is on fire. I'm dying.
I am the one who knocks.
Bears. Beets. Battlestar Galactica.
When they say 2% milk, I don't know what the other 98% is.
It's hard to believe we're even the same species.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Oh my god. The microchip has been compromised.
Dracarys.
All right, welcome back. Red and Red Real Reviews coming at you with another episode. In this one of our favorite shows, returning shows, The Bear, season 4. And I mean, I feel like it's going to be a little silly telling people should you watch it, because of course we're going to tell people that you should watch it. But let's do the old official thing. Should people watch season 4 of FX's The Bear?
Yes. I mean, no hesitation from me, obviously. So for me, each season seems almost better than the last one, with the creativity, the creative shots, like the cinematography, the acting, of course, just everything all in one package. The writing, everything is just stellar. So I don't know how they're going to keep upping the ante from season to season, but I think it just gets better, which is crazy because this is the 4th season, and usually with most shows that are phenomenal from the get-go, they eventually go bad. You know, the writing kind of falls apart, the characters kind of get annoying. This, I don't know how they're going to keep doing it. You know, it's not like, I don't know that they can say that there's going to be 6 or 7 seasons of this show. I wonder if they might just kind of end it prematurely while it's good, but also it keeps getting better. So I don't know.
Well, wasn't this, maybe I'm misremembering a different show, but wasn't there talk that this was just going to be 5? I for some reason I had it in my head that this was like the Eve season.
Oh, could be. Maybe they will announce, you know, since it's fresh out the kitchen, no pun intended, maybe they might announce that there is going to be a next season and that it will be the last. So yeah. I think, you know, they should quit while it's good, but I just can't see it getting bad at this point. Knock on wood. I hope things continue on the way that they are, but everything was stellar. Like, you know, obviously we've had Jeremy Allen White, Ayo Edebiri, Liza Colon, Zayas, Eben Moss Bachrach. They've all been stellar. They've all been nominated for things. But for me, I would like to see Abby Elliott, who plays Nat or Sugar, whatever we're going to call her. I'd like to see her win something or be nominated. I think she might have been nominated for like a Critics' Choice Award or something, not necessarily like a Golden Globe or anything like that, but I'd like to see her nominated. And I thought Molly Gordon, who plays Claire, I thought she was great this season as well.
Yeah, the very limited exposure, though. And
yeah.
To me, to your point on coming out of the kitchen, this is my issue with the way that the series has kind of progressed. The acting is always phenomenal. Like, it always either hits you in the emotions or you're like, that's an award moment right there. But for me, it's like, I felt like this was getting back to like better than season 3. So kind of getting back to the energy it had, but it still kind of is moving away from the kitchen stuff from the first 2 seasons. Like, it's more about the dynamics and the emotions and the relationships between the characters, and there's less really in the kitchen. And it's supposed to be a food show. It's supposed to be a restaurant show. So that's kind of like my little bit of a caveat. Like, it's still something I would recommend. It's still something I very much enjoy, but there's a little bit of a drift from what the show's about, if that makes sense.
I mean, I know that people who are actual chefs and people who work in a restaurant, some of them can't really watch it because it's too chaotic and too triggering for them.
Yeah.
But I mean, I still, yes, there is a personal element to it because you're in a kitchen and you're kind of in the trenches with a whole group of people every day for, I don't know, 10 or 12 hours a day. And it
Mhm.
gets pretty crazy. So I think I did like the way that they showed the relationship aspect of it, even with like Sid and Richie, with Sid and Carmy. But I think they did keep the cooking kitchen nature of the show in it with, talking about whether whether cooking is still his passion or not, with Marcus kind of wrestling with, is he really good at what he does, him being kind of unsure of himself. And then we see later that he's rewarded for being like a best new chef. And then you had Tina's battle with trying to be faster in the kitchen, and she's really trying. And we saw a really serious arc with Tina where she's, making things for her husband, having him test them out. She's really pushing herself to hit this time in the kitchen. And then you had, Carmy struggling to be a mentor for Sydney, which is what she really needs. She needs to learn more. And yeah, so I think the cooking element was still there for me. I didn't feel like they were veering away from that. But to your point, I think, from the get-go, they had that whole plot line of, oh shit, like we're not doing very well. Is this restaurant going to close down? And so that was kind of put on the back burner. Again, sorry, I didn't mean put all these cooking puns in there, but but that plot line was kind of like sidelined in the background, and like it's always there, and we always are aware of the fact that this restaurant could be shut down and their work is all for naught. But at the same time, the dramatic and the relationship stuff took the center stage. So yeah, I mean, it didn't go away, but I can see what you're saying, that it was kind of
I
put to
mean,
the background.
I'll give you the argument on Marcus, but the Carmy stuff, that was Carmy's internal conflict. We don't see, he's this world-class chef that's worked at some of the biggest restaurants in the world, and we don't see him interact with the food at all. Like, so, and the Sydney stuff, that's Sydney's mentorship, it's Sydney's internal conflict, but they're Sydney stories. They're not Sydney's supposed to be this hot young chef that, as obviously we get to the end of the series and there's a big shift in the power dynamics in the bear. So we're not seeing anything tactile or visual to like enhance what we know of Sydney's reputation in the kitchen. Those Sydney storylines are just Sydney storylines. They're with her sister, with her father, with her niece, with the guy Adam was trying to pull her away from the bear. They're all still Sydney storylines. Like, we don't see like the nitty gritty elegance, elevated cooking prowess of the chefs.
I think that's by design though, because we have Carmy questioning his passion, whether he wants to actually do this. And he sort of realizes throughout the season, he's got a lot of issues to deal with, just family issues. He always runs away from relationships, whether romantic or family wise. And I think the way that it's almost like Carmy's internal issues and Sydney's internal issues. She's not sure whether she wants to stay at this job, whether she should go to Shapiro's place. I think their internal struggles are what's holding them back. And so they realize that they have to work on these things in order for their cooking life or life as chefs to be better. And Carmy sort of realizes that, listen, I think the restaurant may be better without me. I think I'm actually holding the restaurant back with all my bullshit of changing the menu every day. Like he's hearing from Tina, he's hearing from Sydney. Like I see that like you're starting to fade. He's hearing it from Tina. So I think their issues are holding them back. Sydney with having her father having a heart attack and her realizing, man, I'm so busy with work that like I'm making my father worry about me. I think
Right. But they're not preventing the restaurant from going on because we still have that scene where the reviewer calls Nat and tells her about the award going to Marcus and that sort of thing. And like they're still producing revenue. And then we have the side story with Ibrahim running the beef. So we know the restaurant is still going. We're just not seeing that. And in the first two seasons, there was a big arc, a big point in Carmy's arc where I don't remember the chef's name. Jeff from Community is the
Joel
real,
McHale, yeah.
yeah, the real asphalt. Well, I mean his character's name.
Yeah.
The is he's like being a real asshole in the chef, and on Carmen, you see Carmy like really getting into the dishes and putting thought into the dishes, and like it was an active strategy in this season for Carmy to break down the menu and make it more simplistic and stop changing all the times. But we never saw him. It was just like kind of spoken dialogue. We didn't actually see like, oh yeah, this dish was a hit. We're gonna keep doing this. But then we never see anyone actually make the dish. So there was still like a moving away. And I agree, it's by design based on what the show is trying to tell.
Right.
But it's still an active moving away from like seeing kitchen life.
Yeah. And I think he realizes like, okay, the more that I get in my chef brain and I need to tinker with things and I need to have control over what dishes we offer and all this stuff, the more the restaurant suffers and the more things go to hell and the more my relationship with those around me, Sid, my number 2, that suffers. So yeah, I think it's I think that's done for a reason to show like the uncertainty with their lives outside the kitchen.
I just want to see food. I want to see food. The emotions are good, but I want to see food. It's in a kitchen, set in a restaurant.
I liked seeing all the desserts that Marcus and Luca were cooking up.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah. The other two things I liked going into this were, one, Richie's back. It felt like Richie was a little bit of an afterthought in the last season. And two, you touched on it before, the countdown clock, the drama with Unc putting pressure on them, and we see at the end of the season the clock does run out. So I feel like those are also things that are kind of upsold points in season 4.
Yeah, it's the pressure of that's driving the season forward. And on the sideline, we have, all these little subplots of what everyone's dealing with. We have Richie dealing with Tiff getting married, which he's still very heartbroken over. We have Sydney dealing with her dad, the debate of whether she wants to leave or not. Tina dealing with racing the clock and them dealing with the aftermath of this review, which didn't paint them favorably.
Yeah. That's a pretty good segue. You think we'd be doing this podcast thing for a while because I think Tiff's wedding in episode 7 was something. This was one of the longest episodes of the season, and there was a lot to unpack in this. There was a lot of emotion set up. There were a lot of fences mended, a lot of pathways kind of set up for future episodes, the last few episodes in this season, as well as whatever's next. So let's unbox this. And one thing I feel like we touched on this in the past as far as the Bear always being the it show for cameos and such. We really didn't get a lot of new cameos. We got a lot of familiar faces from previous seasons, but the only other real new face was Brie Larson, which was kind of a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
But it was funny to see her cast in this kind of catfight relationship role with Nat.
Yeah, and not that I didn't enjoy seeing Brie Larson pop up, like that was fun, but at the same time, I didn't feel like it was wonderful casting because how would the Facts, Neil and Ted, how would their sister have been so good looking? I mean, look at them. Like, no offense, but how in what world is Brie Larson the Facts sister? You know what I'm saying?
Genes are a funny thing.
I guess so. I guess she got all the good genes in the Fact family.
Yeah. And I mean, like the drama between, and it's not so. I don't think it's ever super clear what the drama is like originally between Francie and Nat. But
No.
they wind up throughout the course of the wedding. They wind up with this reconciliation where they realize that Francie really looked up to Nat as kind of like this big sister role, I guess. And then Nat also, her only issue with Francie was that everything worked out for her and she had a lot going for her, so it was a little bit of envy. So they kind of realized like this is stupid. Why are we fighting? We're like we may as well be sisters. Our families were always close.
Yeah, they were literally best friends, and then something happened, and we see that it's all kind of comes to a head at the wedding. Before we have Nat like texting Francie, is that her name? Francie or
Mm.
Frankie? Francie.
I thought it was
Yeah.
Francie because it was Francine. But
Yeah, so we have her texting her like you are dead to me, and like it's like a one-sided text where you can see they text every once in a while to be like I hate you. And then we kind of find out too, like not only are they best friends, but there was like one situation where they hooked up once, questionably. That kind of comes out at the wedding too, which I don't know if it's Pete kind of questions like, are you in love with her or something? And Nat's kind of like, oh, it was just a one time like she kind of alludes to the fact that it was like a drunken like weird thing, like it's
yeah,
not like they're in love with each other.
yeah. The college experimentation, I guess.
I guess, yeah.
Other cameos. I mean, one that's not necessarily a new one because Bob Odenkirk of Breaking Bad and
Mm.
Better Call Saul has been in this before, and Jamie Lee Curtis has obviously reprised the role of Dee, the Berzatto matriarch, before. But there winds up being this situation where Uncle Lee, I thought it was Uncle Leo at first, but the captions read Uncle Lee.
I think it's
Um,
just Lee.
yeah.
I guess he's a longtime friend of Dee Dee. I don't necessarily know if they had a romantic relationship. I guess like he's like a family friend, I guess I would say.
No, or at least he's trying to maintain that that's still their relationship because Carmy almost has this angst that like you're trying to get in with my mom or something like that.
Yeah, that
Um,
wasn't clear.
despite the fact that Dee and Carmy don't exactly have the best relationship either.
Right.
But there winds up being this revelation of Uncle Lee and Carmy running into each other where he's already got these kind of negative energies towards him. But then Uncle Lee says like, "Hey, I saw you at Mikey's funeral. I know you were there," and that kind of is like this unveiling of Carmy in a sense, like where it's like I can't, like I can't hide from things anymore because someone in my family or family adjacent, whatever, knows that I was there. They know that I came home to see Mikey off. They know that this was something that caused internal strife to deal with. So there's it kind of I feel like that's kind of like apart from the Claire stuff, that's like kind of the onion starting to get unpeeled with Carmy's kind of growth and changing of mindset.
Yeah, not only a changing of mindset, but a changing of the way that he looks at this guy Lee. Where I think in the Christmas episode or something, you get this sense that Carmy and maybe the rest of the family look at Lee as like this dirtbag who's like trying to get with their mom or mother figure,
Yeah,
and so he kind of Carmy sort of tests this guy, Lee asks him for gum. I think it's like nicotine gum or something. He's like, thanks for the shitty gum at the end of the conversation. But,
yeah,
he kind of tests him where he sort of thinks that Lee is just trying to be like schmooze or to like be nice to him. So when Lee says, "Oh, Mikey and I were close towards the end," or "Mikey and I were good towards the end," Carmy doesn't really believe him. So he kind of tests him and he's like, "Oh, he talked about me all the time. Okay, what's one thing he said?" And so to his surprise, Lee just kind of starts unloading all these anecdotes of what Mikey had told him. So he starts to believe what Lee is saying, that yes, him and Mikey were good and that he talked about him all the time. And I loved the moment too where Lee not only recognizes, and like with someone you don't know very well, it's sort of interesting to say something so serious to somebody, to say like, "Hey, I did see you at the funeral," where Carmy is kind of silent for a moment. And for Lee to figure out that, okay, were you there because you didn't feel like you deserved to be there? Like he kind of, Lee was onto the reason why Carmy left the funeral, and to have that like very serious moment between two people who really don't know each other or might misunderstand each other, like that was interesting.
Yeah, it was like a judgment, but not really judging. And like you said with uh, the 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 gum thing, it's like, what, you really can be a prick sometimes. And he goes like,
Yeah.
yeah, and I was like, well, I mean, yeah, I guess that is kind of the Uncle Lee thing, but I mean, you're right in the sense of like this is someone that was kind of an aggressive presence in the family, and now he's the reason to kind of get this shift to come back around.
Right. Like the fact that Carmy can unload that off of his conscience. And this guy was, he did call him a prick, and he's like, I think in the Christmas scene from, a few seasons ago, it was like this Lee guy was just coming in, almost probably that Carmy was looking at him like, "Why is this guy like trying to low key be my dad? Like, get the fuck
Right.
out of here." You know what I mean?
Which, and like you said a minute ago, to that point, what he said about his conversations with Mikey, those provided a sense of validation for Carmy.
Right.
Because like the season starts off with yet another scene where Carmy and Mikey are talking way back when, and Carmy still sees himself as not good enough in Big Brother's eyes, but like knowing that, and I think there's another scene in the finale with Richie too, where this is kind of touched on a little bit too, but these revelations from Uncle Lee are proven that Mikey was proud of Carmy, and all of a sudden, like this sense of pressure or burden is now off of Carmy's shoulders.
Yeah. And what a person to provide that as this sketchy guy that
Yeah,
like your mom may or may not be dating. So
yeah.
so that was ironic to have that whole scene. But I thought it was funny that they were both kind of hiding out in the kitchen, and then Lee says, "Well, I got to get going." And then Carmy goes back to the reception, and that's when, even more happens after that. After he's had this huge revelation off his shoulders, like he can, I don't want to say enjoy the wedding, but he can kind of breathe
Relax.
easy a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as far like as relaxing and funny things are concerned, I thought one thing was funny because we have this kind of healing moment with a lot of the characters where they
Yeah.
all meet under this table.
Mm.
And Richie and Tiff's daughter Eva is so nervous about dancing with Frank, and Frank thinks it's like this thing that he has to do to prove he can be the father figure with Richie not living with them anymore. Like, so he thinks he has to do this, and Eva doesn't want to. She's nervous about dancing, and slowly but surely, every character starts coming in under the table, and it winds up being little bits of healing moments. It's not just like Richie and Frank
Right.
before they go under the table, where they realize that Eva loves both of them because when she's with Richie, all she talks about is Frank. When she's with Frank, all she talks about is Richie. So there winds up being that. And then there's a moment with Claire and Carmy when they come under the table where Carmy kind of, it's another nugget in the season where Carmy realizes that he has to make changes in his life. And as everyone keeps filling out the table, like, how big is this freaking table?
It's got to be like a 8 foot, 10 foot long reception table, I would guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was a kind of a theme of honesty and everyone having these revelations that the things they've been agonizing over and worrying about are all okay. You know, the
Mhm.
whole season up to episode 7, you had Richie kind of a bag of nerves about Tiff's
Yeah.
wedding and just, you know, it's funny because everyone keeps saying, oh, that Frank, you know, he's such a good guy and he's so nice and everything. But it turns out, I think Richie says it to Claire because she's standing right there when he and Frank kind of have a moment. And she says to him, is that true? The fact that Eva talks about Frank, and Richie's like, no, like he lied about it, but he lied about it to be the better person. Like, you know, everyone keeps saying Frank is a good guy, but is Richie a good guy too? Because he's willing to be the better person and comfort Frank when says he's nervous about being a stepdad. Because I think Richie is internally like, well, I've been nervous about all of this shit. And so like I see that he's nervous too. So like I'm gonna embrace that. And the fact that we have to be co-parents. And I think, you know, he was probably thinking about what Jessica, the hostess at the restaurant or whatever, she said to him, like, listen, like I wouldn't worry about the fact that you guys are in competition. Like you guys are both trying to make a happy life for this little girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all there. It's a compliment thing, and I mean, I
Yeah.
think to your point of like Richie's a good person too. I think like from us watching the show, especially I mean, we both like Richie, so it's like
Mm,
I also kind of feel like it's never really a question to the audience that Richie's a good person.
yeah.
He just needs to figure it out for himself because Richie has had this very non-traditional, rough around the edges path to where he is in life, and when things don't go according to life's plan, they can also be manifested in very abrasive ways. As opposed to Frank, you know, he's this well-off guy. He owns a tech firm or whatever it is. Like he's got money and he's got success, so it's probably also a little bit of comparative, um, like not feeling like you're good enough, like a sense of self worth for Richie seeing
Oh,
him
for
with this
sure.
guy who's very successful and very wealthy.
Yeah. And I think he feels like I'm the loser. You know,
Mhm.
I not only did I lose the girl, I lost Tiff. He seems like he
My
sees it
daughter
as he
too.
lost, right? He sees it as he lost his family and this Frank guy won out. But I mean, this is, you know, we have a moment where I think he works at the restaurant, then he like goes out to a bar and has a drink. He comes home and he's watching TV and he's like writing, you know, quotes in his little book or like reciting quotes like cuz he wants to inspire people, right? He before every meeting of service, he kind of pumps everybody up and that's
Yeah.
like his role and like he says towards the end to Carmy, he's like, this is all I have. Like, you know, even when Mikey died, like I showed up to the restaurant because that's the one thing that I could be consistent with. And like the beef and this job is literally all I have in life. And like we see it in a moment of despair, he's actually like praying and he says, like, please let this work out.
And showing up to the beef was also the only way he knew, the only way he thought he could help Mikey, because
Right.
that was the all he had into his identity. Like he could not figure out any other way to try and save Mikey besides just showing up at the beef every day and working and trying to help him out to save this business. The ties of that restaurant to him are so ingrained throughout his entire character arc. It's not just limited to him going off and learning the maitre d
Right.
thing, or his role with the bear currently, or his role with Mikey and the beef. Like it's the entire lineage, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, and I will talk a little bit more about how he ends up at the end of the season, but I did like, I mean, I don't like Richie. I love Richie. Like he's one of my favorite, probably top two, three characters. Like I love him. I love his everything he goes through. I love that actor. I think he's amazing. I think he should have
Mhm.
won. And I like the fact that, I mean, I didn't know where to throw this in, but I kind of like the fact that, and we've seen it in the previous season, I think, they're setting it up to, oh, could Richie be happy romantically? Like he obviously has this chemistry and this connection with Jessica, who, is from the restaurant in New York.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like the fact that it looks like they're setting that up for that to be something now that Richie has sort of made peace with the Tiff and Frank situation.
They could. I don't know if it's necessary. Because Richie's fulfillment, I think, is based off a lot of other things. So I don't
Mm.
necessarily know if that would be necessary for him to be at this moment of peace and happiness. Um, but they certainly are teasing something like that because there is some chemistry there between them, even though it doesn't necessarily feel like a natural chemistry. It feels like an environmental chemistry.
Which the thing with the tie, like I mean, there was definite tension with that. So I
Yeah.
think we're being set up to see more of that. That's my prediction.
And more on Richie, just like a moment of like Richie's sage. He goes up to Unk, and Unk starts it off with this funny comment of like, "Man, you and Carmy really screwed up. Look at Claire, look at Tiff, blah 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 blah." And Richie, instead of like the old Richie, you would think he would get ruffled under the feathers a little bit with that,
Mm.
but this Richie is kind of a little more mature, and he like comes out with this anecdote of this garden in Kyoto where everyone is a rock, and he always thought he was a rock because everyone left his life, and he always felt isolation, and he realized that maybe he's not a rock, maybe he's the sand underneath the rock that kind of keeps everyone together because everyone in the restaurant, everyone connected to the Berzattos has some tie to Richie.
Mm.
So like to me, like that was kind of my interpretation of that, like why Richie feels like that is the fact that because everyone he probably knows deep down inside that he has this relationship with everyone, so he kind of feels like maybe he's the glue that holds everyone together.
Yeah, and I don't we kind of find out that he's not a real cousin?
Well, I kind of knew he wasn't a real cousin from the get go. That's just I feel like there's certain um heritages in society that like they just call you cousin. You're around all the time, so you basically are like a cousin, even though there's no blood connection.
Yeah, it's the same thing with like, oh, my crazy Uncle Joe or whatever. Like he's
Yeah,
not really familially my uncle, but he's just like a family friend. And I thought that was interesting in the wedding episode too, because we had that moment where Tiff says that it really matters to her that um Uncle Jimmy, Carmy are all there because the Berzattos are her family because her own family didn't show up to the wedding. And she kind of thought that when she was done with Richie, that family would leave her, with that connection being severed. So yeah, it's the fact that you can have these deep connections and feel like a family, but you don't have to be blood related. And I
right.
I I think everyone can relate to that. Like I have family friends that I've known for I mean even more than I've been alive. Like my parents have known for 40 years or so where they're closer than some family I have that is blood related. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting with the within the Berzatto family and Carmy's family and linking that to Tiff and linking that to Richie and how it all works.
Yeah, it's a shared connection thing. It's not necessarily always blood. It's a shared
Mm-hmm.
connection that makes family, that sort of thing.
Right.
And we'd be remiss not to mention, we don't have to spend a ton of time on it, but I feel like it should be noted the fact that Carmy and Claire have this dance that it kind of feels like, I don't want to say a moment of forgiveness, but it kind of feels like, okay, this is probably the moment where we can see them be together again at some point.
Yeah, I definitely could. And it was a funny way that it happened because Carmy didn't really know what he was getting into. Like he just saw like the legs and he's probably like, oh, Richie's under the, like he didn't
Yeah.
know who was under the table. So when he, to his surprise, he gets under there and he sees Claire, like, who's like right next to him. He's like, oh shit. And they're, in front of Eva. So like he can't just back out and be like, I'm not coming under here.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
he kind of has to like hack it. He's got to deal with it. So that was kind of an awkward situation. He's right next to Claire after they had this whole closure moment earlier in the season, which that was one of the most well acted things I've ever seen in my life. That
Oh, the finale? Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, there were so many good moments, but no, the moment with when Carmy races to Claire's house and is like, I need to talk to her, and they
Earlier.
hash it out. Yeah, that was like very like realistic, and that was just amazing. And there is so much chemistry with them. I think Jeremy Allen White and Molly Gordon, they did date. I don't think they are currently, but it's obvious. Like they have very strong on-screen chemistry. And yeah, at the wedding, like they're dancing like face to face. They're dancing very closely. So you can see that. And then they have the moment, I don't know if it's in the last episode or 8th or 9th, but when he goes to visit Dee Dee, it's a big thing for him to visit his mom, and he calls Claire. So you can kind of see that they're reconciling, and maybe they're not anything officially right now, but maybe they're working on themselves to eventually be back together again.
Another stellar acting moment. I kind of feel like I guess it must have been the Globe that went to Jeremy Allen White this past award season. I kind of feel like that one was kind of just like give it to him anyway because he was great, but I feel like he wasn't as great in season 3 as the previous 2 seasons. This season, if he were to win it, that would be completely deserving.
Oh man, like not like you're right. Not that he wasn't great in the previous seasons, but this season, like there were like 3 or 4 moments, the one with Dee Dee, the one with Claire. I would like, oh man. And then I mean, we'll talk about the finale too, but the way that like the shouting match, that was realistic.
Who?
Like I got like very anxious and like uncomfortable with them all yelling at each other because that was so like it wasn't like they had lines and were going one by one. They were talking at the same time, which is like very realistic. And just the way that these scenes were done was just, I just can't like, it's one thing to say, oh my God, phenomenal acting, but it just like, I don't understand how it can keep getting better. It's just, I can't overstate that enough, like phenomenal acting.
Incredibly real. The chemistry is very much on point. Now we always joke around as far as the Bears' identity as a comedy versus a drama, and it's always in the comedy categories for the award shows. And it's like, this is so, I mean, it has its moments. It can be very funny, but it's a drama. The acting is amped up on top of that as well. So like we're both in agreement that this really is not a comedy. However, I feel like I wrote down more funny lines in this season than I did the last season. So we got to go over a few of our favorites.
I mean, I think, for real, this season definitely skewed even more drama for me. Like there were so many heart to heart moments. It was crazy, but I do think similar to last season, any comedic lines mostly came from Neil and Ted. For the most part. I mean, obviously Sydney had her like little funny one-liners. Like she kind of calls out how situations are awkward or things like that. So she has a lot of funny lines, none of which I wrote down, but that's just kind of her like quirky personality. But yeah, I mean, I do think obviously this is definitely, it's always been more of a drama than a comedy, but which irks me is they're not going to change the nomination in that category. So that it's just a
Yeah.
whole thing. But yeah, I really loved the whole thing this season of Neil kind of being like a child and Nat being like, "Oh, hey buddy," or sweetheart, like just
I
treating him
always
like a
felt he was like that. I always felt he was like that.
like I just think that's so funny. And it's like kind of endearing in a funny way, like, you know, with the hot chocolate at the wedding, like they were
Yeah.
basically like,
Got it
"Oh,
on his mustache.
we're gonna fuck up that kid like who didn't tell you where he got the hot chocolate," or
Yeah.
and like the moment where he's peeking around the corner and he's like afraid to tell her something. I think it's about the wedding.
It was
And
about that Francie's invited. He
yeah,
invited,
that's what
yeah.
it was. And she's like, hey, buddy, like, what's going on?"
I would
Like,
never be mad at you.
I just thought that was so funny how she was like talking down to him, and even more so when he and Ted are like, "Oh, could we hold the baby?" And she's like, "Hell no, you're not holding the baby." Like basically,
Yeah.
like you're not old enough or you're not mature enough. And then the moment where they kind of sneak in that they see the baby sleeping and she's not around. And so Ted is like, "What does it smell like?" He says it, not like, "What does Sophie or the baby smell like?" He's like, and then Neil says, "Like raspberries chewed up." And I just thought that was so funny because he is like a child. Like
Yeah.
that was just such a funny description to me.
Matty Matheson is that's I think that's just his normal being too. Like I literally think he's playing himself.
He is, but I also
Yeah,
found out, I'm pretty sure that he has a cooking background.
he
So
does.
I think, yeah, he was hired for that
Yeah.
reason primarily, which is
He
funny.
he was he had a show on Vice, cooking show on
Hmm.
Vice.
Oh.
Um that speaking of the smell of the baby, one of the funny lines I wrote down was when Nat brings Sophie in to meet Carmy in the staff, and
Mm.
Carmy's like, oh, like, because Carmy at one point apologizes, like, I'm sorry I haven't been by to meet her. So she brings the baby to the
Mm.
restaurant for everyone to meet, and he takes her and he's like, oh, she smells like onions, and so and Nat goes like, well, she's half Berzatto. That was gonna happen anyway.
Yeah,
uh,
that was a cute line. And then he's like, she's like, "I have to pee. Can you hold her?" And he's like, how do
yeah,
I hold her?" Like,
like you would hold anything that's precious.
yeah, which is funny because you know, that was a true acting moment because Jeremy Allen White actually has like a kid or two. So that he is a
Yeah.
father. So he had to act to not be a father and not be comfortable with babies.
Yeah. And speaking of touching moments, there was one where Richie is trying to sell up the experience of being at the bear, and there's
Mm.
this family that comes out from California, and they go to, of course, they're in Chicago, and it's not the winter time, but the daughter that's been in cancer remission, she wants to see snow. So Richie has this idea to like make fake snow, and he like all of a sudden he starts ripping off all the ingredients he needs to make fake snow, and he goes, "Thank you, DeVry," which I always laugh at because I don't know if you saw the same ads I did growing up in a different part of Connecticut, but I always used to see DeVry ads on TV. So
Oh yeah.
when
Yeah,
I see,
University of Phoenix, DeVry, that was a thing like 10 to 15 years ago. Very much those online universities and things like that. Yeah. So that was
all right,
funny.
10 to 15 years. Thanks for making us feel young. Um,
Sorry.
maybe it's a lot longer than that.
Probably.
And the other one I thought of was when we'll get into more of the real meaty details of this, but this
Mm.
whole Abraham arc with Albert, and Albert presents all this data to him on beef, and how they've been doing it on a very small staff. And
Mm.
Albert goes like, Jesus, you don't fuck around. And he's like kind of says, oh, not since Kuwait. Like he was involved in some like uh, rural or cultural dispute, in another country in out in Kuwait before he came to America, that sort of thing. So I kind of thought that was funny.
Yeah, and I didn't write it down, but I thought funny. There were a couple funny moments with Ibra. Like he just seems like such a sweet, nice guy, and I love the part where I think it might have been when Albert was saying, "Listen, you gotta like, I know I told you to think small, but you got to think of expanding this to like a franchise thing. Like, you got to open at least 2 more of the beef windows. And and Ibra's like, Albert says, "Oh wow, you're already thinking of like marketing and stuff like that." And Ibra keeps regurgitating all these lines of like, he's like, ba da ba ba ba, or he's like,
Yeah,
"I'm loving it," and Albert's like, "No,
like
that's
don't take
McDonald's."
it.
Like, yeah, he keeps like
And
spitting out all these go-to lines for restaurants.
and it gets to the end where he just says 7-Eleven. Now he's like, are you just naming restaurants now?
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was cute. Like, it just shows like Ibra's like, "I'm trying."
Yeah. All right. Finale time. Before we get into obviously the big blow up between the Berzatto brain trust,
Mm,
um, we have to get into this Ibrahim and Albert thing because from the start, Albert had this very like sleazy feel about him, and I kind of like throughout the entire, and it wasn't really resolved at the end because they never really like showed like what
right.
side he was playing throughout the whole thing. Like every time they have an interaction, like this man is going to take advantage of this poor guy and this that's killing it on the side of the bear, serving the beef sandwiches, and he's going to take all his money and really take advantage of him. And I didn't know if like you felt the same way that like there's this kind of like sleazy thing going on here that Ibrahim's gonna get burned.
I was a little bit skeptical from the get-go. And I mean, I'm trying to remember, doesn't Albert come in and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm your mentor
Yeah.
that the community college or something assigned?" Is that, I don't.
Well, Ibrahim, like I got the impression like he reached out to him, Albert to find some kind of a mentor.
Okay, so I don't
Yeah.
know if he's like, it made me a little skeptical. I'm like, is Ibra paying this guy to coach him? Like, I
Right.
wasn't really certain on that, but yeah, I could see him taking advantage and trying to worm his way into the deal. And he did say that, like, "Oh, if it works out, maybe you could cut me a slice of that pie."
Right.
And I was a little bit skeptical of him talking like that, but also, isn't Uncle Jimmy the one that owns the beef side of the business? So obviously they would have to, like, Ibra says like, "Oh, I'm gonna have to ask like the Berzattos, or I'm gonna have to ask Carmy or other people about this." So I think he wouldn't really make a deal without them, obviously. Like, he needs to get them involved, but it did make me feel a little bit more comfortable with the Albert situation when Albert kind of bumps into Uncle Jimmy and Computer, and he's telling Computer about his idea about the franchise, and Computer's like, "That's a great idea." So the fact that he thinks it's a legitimate idea makes me think he's going to run it up to Jimmy for consideration. But yeah,
Well,
there's always that question of whether like this guy's like, "You need to cut me into the deal because I had the idea."
see that almost to me that almost like worked up my anxiety over this more because because when Unc comes in, Computer and Albert are just talking to each other, and Unc just pulls up and he's honking the horn. He's like, "Let's go, let's get the F
Yeah.
out of here, get the F out of here." Well, like
Yeah.
he doesn't want to hear anything about this. And Computer is someone who's like only interested in Unc's financials. Like he doesn't have the emotional tie to the Berzattos, to the bear. Like I get the feeling like he's not in it to see it succeed. He just, if it's not at this bottom line, we're out. We're pulling the plug. So like to see Computer have this conversation with Albert away from Abraham and Unc's not really giving it the time of day, I almost kind of feel like there's going to be this extra angle now where Computer is going to and Albert are going to be an allyship that ultimately just drives a wedge in this whole thing.
I hope it's not something that's done like behind, Jimmy's back or anything like that. But the way that I looked at it, Computer kind of has that hard, like he's kind of got a hard and tough approach to numbers. And like he does tell Nat, like, "Why would you keep this going? Like, you could keep this going, but why would you keep this going when it's like running on life support, basically?" And so I think he has this really hard and tough, realistic standpoint with numbers, and like he knows his stuff. So if he thinks that this franchise approach is going to work, like I hope it's all above board and like he is going to tell Jimmy about it to convince Jimmy. But I just worry about this Albert guy getting like a bigger cut than he deserves. And I wonder like what his intentions are. Like, is he a mentor where he just wants to see businesses thrive, or is he just looking to get some for himself?
Right. And Computer is someone that like he doesn't have any faith in Carmy, and Unc doesn't really either, but Carmy is still like the surrogate nephew to Unc. So but Computer does not have that relationship with him. So he just thinks this guy is a spiraling disaster, and it's just bottom line, bottom line, bottom line. So like that's just, it adds to the whole, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah, but I did like, and I don't remember if it's before the shouting conversation or if it was after. It must have been after. I'm trying to think of where in sequence it came, but the moment where somebody says, "Oh yeah, Jimmy wanted you to call him," and I think Carmy's thinking like, oh, okay, it must be about the fact that like the clock is going to run out and like we're screwed and we're done with this. So I loved the moment of Carmy kind of going in the freezer, taking his phone and leaving a message for Unc and being like, I don't say it enough that I appreciate you and thank you so much for letting me do this. And like he kind of thinks it's a goodbye, or it's we're closing down.
So you did think that was a message to Unc, because when the phone call started, I thought it was legit to Claire, but towards the end of it, I'm like, this kind of feels like it's more of an Unc thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think he alludes to the fact that like you've taken care of us. And there have been moments in previous seasons where Unc communicates to Carmy or to like Dee Dee that like I'm trying to, like I know that these boys didn't have a dad and like I'm trying to like look after them. And like sometimes he can be kind of a dick, but in the long run, he's worried about, Carmy, and he's worried about his investment, and we find out he's downsizing. He's moving to a condo, probably because the restaurant's not doing very well. So like he's modifying his life to fit what the family is doing with this business.
Yeah. Well, which honestly shows his commitment to it, but like he still wants it to work out.
Yeah.
Now, with the restaurant working out, that obviously sets up the future of it, which is a big combative situation at the end here. And Carmy gets in this big shouting match with Sydney. Then Richie joins in, and he gets in a big shouting match with Richie. They even get physical for a couple minutes. And even with all that, and you already kind of fangirled over this a little bit at the top, I'm going to do my own little fanboying here. Because to me, the best moment in this whole climactic finale was when Nat finally walks into the situation, and we've already seen all this shouting, all this anger, all this hostility, and as soon as they tell Nat, who has absolutely no idea what's going on because she respected the whole attorney privilege with Pete and Carmy, so she has no idea what any of this is about. So when Carmy tells her, she's speechless, but she doesn't get mad. She doesn't shout. All she does is walk up to Carmy and embrace him, and no dialogue spoken. And I almost feel like that moment was just as powerful as any spoken dialogue that this season had. To like just see the emotion on both their faces. It's like, I know you did this because you had to do it. Your conflict is controlling you. This needed to happen, and like, I'm so happy for you. I'm so proud of you. It was like one of those moments.
Yeah, that scene was just very loaded because, first we had Sid and Carmy shouting. We have Richie who comes in like, what the hell are you guys arguing about?
Yeah.
He gets like, informed. And then finally Nat walks in and literally Sydney is like, he's leaving. And then Richie is like, kind of filling her in on he was at the funeral. And so yeah, it's just everyone was laying their cards out on the table. Like the theme was honesty. Everyone had really hashed it out. And then Nat coming out and finding out was really like the cherry on top of like a few episodes arc worth of honesty. Like all the honesty just kind of builds up and comes to a point. And then, especially with Dee Dee and Carmy reconciling. And like, obviously Dee Dee is Nat's mom too. So yeah, it was just the culmination of so much stuff that had been brought to a head. And yeah, so I really liked how that all ended with especially the friendship and the support that we got between Sid and Richie this season, where she comes to the wedding to kind of help him out, in support, and they sort of sideline Dee Dee so that Carmy can be alone in the kitchen. And yeah, I loved how when she said, these are my terms, I want to add Richie to the agreement. I'm like, yes. I'm like, that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, Richie has such an emotional and like personal investment in wanting this business to thrive. Like, he eats and sleeps this business. Like, they showed him watching TV at night and he was still in his black suit. Like, he's living this black suit life where he just, all of his energy and time is put into making sure this restaurant thrives. That's why he took it so personally when the review came out. Like, oh, like they said I was all over the place. And he really took that to heart to be like, oh, I'm so stupid. Like, like that's literally how he feels. Like, so I thought it was the natural step for him to be a partner in this restaurant. And then he kind of, when Sydney suggests that, he kind of downplays it. Like, yeah, like he's like, yeah, like he doesn't think it's for real. And then Carmy's like, no, this is for real.
I don't necessarily think that he didn't necessarily think that part was for real. I think he rejected it because I almost feel like he took it as a slight, like they needed to work him in as, like Sydney felt that she needed to work him in as a partner in order for him to feel invested. And it's like, no, this is my life. Like, I'm not going anywhere. Of course I'm invested. Like I kind of feel like it was like he was almost like saying, like, well, you don't have to do that to know I'm in, because I'm in. This is me.
Right. Like, I think it was almost to a self-worth thing. Like, I don't think I deserve it, or, I think that's why he was kind of playing it off. Like, A, I don't deserve it. B, like, you guys are just saying that to like make me feel good. And then Carmy's like, no, this is real. This is legit. Yeah. And so when it ended that way, I was just like, man, Nat, Richie, Sid, and then we got Jimmy on the beef side. And then literally the last thing we see is the clock running out and it goes to 0. And we're like, oh shit, how is this going to continue?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, to your point real quick on, Richie, it really sets Richie off when he finds out that Carmy was at like his funeral, because like he put so much burden on himself with Carmy not being there and trying to prove himself to Carmy. Like, I don't know whether it was like I can be your big brother too or something like that, because like, and he goes that funny anecdote he has about the French laundry cookbook. It's like, yo, this dude is a fucking G if he understands this shit that's in here.
Yeah, and it was so sad that like him and Carmy have had kind of difficulties the past few seasons. Like, they've had like a weird rift in their relationship, and we find out that the whole reason that existed is because Richie thinks that Carmy didn't go to the funeral because he resented Richie. That's what he literally thought. So the fact that they were able to just, again, lay the cards out on the table and say like, listen, this is what I thought, this is what I thought, and that they can just let that dissolve. And I mean, Richie was very upset. Like, he was gonna come at, like, they were again face to face. So yeah, I mean, that was a moment of some tension, but it was all diffused. And yeah, that was insane.
Well, come at us, but don't show us any tension. If you enjoy listening to our show, we would very much appreciate a 5-star review on your audio platforms of choosing. We're on video as well if you like to see the ginger greatness, but make sure, because we acknowledge you may not find us unless you're searching for the show you're watching, please hit that follow or subscribe button to know exactly when our episodes drop. To get in touch with us, email us redandredrealreviews@gmail.com. That is the letter N and real spelled with 2 E's. And you can follow the show on Instagram at redandredrealreviews. Next up, everyone seems to be abuzz about the show The Waterfront on Netflix. People are comparing it to the Ozark. Is that accurate? Not so much. We'll be the ones to let you know. Keep it real. Until the very next real review, Red and Red are signing out.
In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world.
Don't act so surprised, Your Highness.
Hey guys, you ready to let the dogs out?
What? Do what?
No. Try not. Do. Or do not.
Because I don't want no scrubs.
Let the dogs out, you know, like, who let the dogs out? Who? Who brought this guy along?
I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chum some of this shit.
One more thing. Do me a favor. Don't go chasing waterfalls.
Mankind, that word should have new meaning for all of us today.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
I'll take care, all right? None but love. None but love. Have any clue what's about to happen to him?
Oh, not a chance in hell. Good night.
Peace! Smile, you son of a...
You did it. You crazy son of a bitch, you did it.
Not funny anymore.
TLC references. Still, nothing. I swear to you.
But as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.